Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Chicago, for this humbling victory. All I can say, you sure know how to make a guy feel at home.
Oh, hey. What's going on, Rob? That was nice.
I haven't heard that one in a while, D.
What's that noise in the background I just heard there?
I don't know. It's the sound of Rom crying because he didn't get the Department of Transportation gig.
All right. Well, hey, your Ben Joravsky show is just moments away. It's Tuesday, December 15th. Okay, seriously, I'm hearing some audio in the background. Who's talking?
Let me listen.
What is that? What is that?
I don't know. They've tapped into our show. We now control you. Here comes the brown line.
Oh, boy. Okay, we're still a show. We're about to do the show that you regularly hear right now. Your Ben Joravsky show for Tuesday, December 15th is moments away. But first, let's thank the Chicago Reader for bringing the Ben Joravsky show to you right now. It's on the Chicago Reader YouTube channel, chicagoreader.com. For all things there is to know about the city of Chicago, a fantastic publication. Go check it out and subscribe to the Chicago Reader, showing that you support the Ben Joravsky show. You know, you can do that by subscribing to the Chicago Reader. Do that. And today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. All right, you do have a song of the day, and it is from Frank. And Frank, are you sure about this? Oh, boy. Okay. Today's song of the day, I Will Always Love You by Dolly Parton.
Oh, my God. A, I love Dolly Parton. And B, I love this song. This is to you, Dolly. Love you, Dolly. This is the Dolly Parton version as opposed to the Whitney Houston. And I will love you. Woo. Oh,
So that was the Whitney version or the Dolly version?
That was the Dolly. That was the Benny J version. I don't want to. You know what? I love Whitney Houston and Dolly Parton way too much to sully them with that horrific rendition of a great song.
Horrific indeed. The Ben Joravsky show starts now. It is Tuesday, December 15th, and live from my apartment in his attic, this is the Ben Joravsky show. Today on the program, our Chicago Reader colleague returns, Maya Dukmasova. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Ben Joravsky here, calling this Winner Tuesday, and here's why. Great weekend. You have a good weekend, D?
It wasn't bad.
Okay, that's what I want to hear. That's what not bad is not bad.
Yeah.
I saw Small Axe, Steve McQueen's series on Amazon. I think it's Amazon. Maybe it's Hulu. I don't know. Look it up. Good stuff. There's a whole movie, a whole episode dedicated to a party that took place in about 1978, which is also known as my glory years. So anyway, Small Axe, run, don't walk to see it. Then I settled in for the festivities yesterday as the electors officially gathered to elect the new president of the United States, and the winner is Joey B. Hey, come on down, Joey B. with Vice President Kamala Harris. Yeah, all right, woo-wee. And when the vote was announced, I quickly ran over to Rush Street and overturned a couple of cars, just like I did when the Bulls won their championships.
Oh, my, Ben.
I must apologize on several fronts for that alleged joke. One, I was just kidding. I never overturned any cars. D, as you could probably figure it out a long time ago, I'm just not the overturn the car kind of guy. In fact, I could never understand why anybody would respond to something good in their life by, I know, I'm going to overturn a couple cars.
I've seen you flip a few bikes, though. Oh, boy, watch out.
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone, make sure the kids hear words.
Congrats, Joe Biden.
It's really important that kids hear words, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, I also want to apologize because I used that overturn the cars joke in the Reader newsletter that I wrote last night, D. I liked it so much, I used it again. Dennis and I have had this conversation many times. Comedians get really mad when they hear that someone stole their joke. But in this case, I stole a joke from myself. So it's not really theft. Plus, it's really not a joke. So anyway, let's get back to the presidency. The only reason that we were so closely watching the electors vote, and really we were watching it, like the Sun-Times was giving us up-to-date, reporting by Lynn Sweet on how the electors voted. The only reason we were closely watching is that President Donnie made such a big deal about challenging the election. He said it was riddled with larceny. Without a shred of evidence, he said the Dems either created non-existent votes for Joe Biden or stole real ones for him. And that explains how he lost. Because, of course, he couldn't have possibly been rejected by the voters for being a terrible president. As a result of his protests, thousands of Trump's dim-witted supporters took to the streets, in some cases quite violently. So it's really hard to joke about their gullibility. It's not really a joking matter. And I want to thank Stephen for his email on this subject. I'll read it later. He raises some good points. Anyway, the Supreme Court, as we all know, ruled against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's Hail Mary, and the electors voted for Biden, and then Senator Mitch McConnell made it official. The headline, quote, after weeks of silence, McConnell congratulates Biden and says, quote, the Electoral College has spoken. Hear, hear. And yet, that has not stopped Donald Trump from raising monies from his aforementioned dim-witted supporters. Exhibit A, an email that I received about an hour ago. And let me quote the headline on the email. President Trump picked you, and you is spelled in all caps. Now here's the lead to the email. Quote, congratulations. You've won the weekly Trump Patriot 1,000% impact offer. End of quote. I was amazed. I didn't even know I was in the running for such a distinction. The email continues, quote, each week, President Trump selects one of his best supporters to receive an exclusive 1,000% impact offer. And this week, the winner is you. End of quote. Now, folks, I'm not sure what amazes me the most about that sentence. One, that Donald Trump himself makes this all-important selection, going through thousands of applicants. Or that two, I'm considered one of Donald Trump's supporters. Maybe there's something about me that I didn't even know.
You crazy, man.
You know, on some levels, I'm really going to miss this guy. Some levels. I've always liked that windmill thing. I realized I have so much in common with Donald Trump. We like making funny noises. Anyway, I read on to see what exactly I won. Having been personally selected by Donald Trump, D. Personally selected by Donald Trump. Don't be jealous, D. He didn't personally select you.
I know.
No. A lot of envy, folks. If you could see Dennis, there's a green shade to his face because he's green with envy. He was not personally selected by Donald Trump. So I wondered, what do I win having been personally selected by Donald Trump? Do I win a computer? I need one. I need a new screen.
That would be awesome.
With a camera.
That would be awesome.
I need one. How about a car? Am I finally going to get that blue Mustang I've always fantasized about? Nope. Didn't win anything like that. Instead, I won the honor of knowing that if I contribute any amount in the next 2 hours, you can increase your impact by 1,000%. And that's a quote. I don't even know what that means. And then there's this warning. So this is really important. Quote, this offer is only available to you for the next 2 hours. Friend, and yes, they call me friend. After that, your offer will be given to the next patriot in line, end of quote. So let me get this straight. I have 2 hours to give Donald Trump my money, or what? I lose my opportunity to give Donald Trump my money? Like Donald Trump won't take my money in 3 hours? Sorry, you missed your deadline. I can't take your money. That's my really bad Donald Trump imitation. How is this big honor, by the way? You know, how have I won? But I know it must work somewhere. I could just see some MAGA guy. Picture young Johnny Cash jubilantly running through his house. Honey, quick, get out the checkbook. We won the right to give Donald Trump our money. But if we don't give it to him in 2 hours.
Wait, the singer Johnny Cash?
I knew there would be confusion. No, the singer Johnny Cash was too smart to bid for MAGA. Plus, he died before MAGA became a thing.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm talking about the columnist, Johnny Cass, who loves MAGA. Come on, Johnny Cass. Even Johnny, I don't think John Cass would fall for this one. I don't think he'd be the guy running through the house going, quick, honey, get out the checkbook. We won the right to give Donald Trump our money.
Well, we're going to find out right now on the phone. John Cass. I'm just kidding.
But if we don't give it to him in 2 hours, he'll give that right to some. How is that even like a threat? I'm sorry, if you don't give me my money in 2 hours, you lose the right to give me my money. I won't accept it. Please take my money. Nope, got 2 hours. Oh, wait, here comes the brown line. Huh? Pete Buttigieg is driving the train today, D.
Oh,
Pete
really?
Buttigieg.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And of all people.
Yeah, well, you know, Mayor Pete got the gig as transportation department secretary. Joe Biden said, I'm not taking Rahm Emanuel. I may have been born at night, but I wasn't born last night.
Rumor has it he's in town to try out these cinnamon rolls everybody's talking about.
Buttigieg, I heard the great, and it's right off the brown line. Ann Sathers just wrote a column about that for my beloved Chicago Reader. Oh boy, did I rip Tom Tunney. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, back to the fundraising letter. The letter doesn't say what Donald Trump will do with the money that I have 2 hours to give him. You know, it doesn't say he'll spend it in the Georgia Senate races or use it to pay his legal bills or use it to pay back the taxes the IRS says he owes. I guess it's just his to spend however he wants. Only MAGA can win by losing. We got a great show today, everyone. Maya Dukmasova will be with us, my colleague at the Reader and my partner in crime at First Tuesday. She has one request, Steve. Do not, under any circumstances, ask her about Dr. Bidengate.
Don't ask Dr. Biden. Okay.
Bidengate.
Got it noted.
Huge story that erupted this weekend on the internet. Joseph Epstein, an essayist for the Wall Street Journal, made fun of Jill Biden, First Lady Jill Biden, because she uses the title doctor. It was a very patronizing and condescending essay that I found exceedingly annoying. It was a classic, I'm smart, you're not essay. But he had a point, D. I don't know. He had a point. The man had a point.
What, that people should not call her a doctor, or she should not call herself a doctor?
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. Should you, if you're a professor of education, should you call yourself a doctor? I don't know. And this is particularly relevant to our show because Dennis is always adamant that he be not called a doctor.
Yes. I was going to say, funny you have that perspective because you call me a doctor every day.
You know, my attitude on this, if you want to be called a doctor and if you've gone to graduate school and you've earned a degree and you put in the time and you spent the money, yes, you should get to call yourself a doctor. Sorry, Joey Epstein. But on the other hand, if you don't want to be called doctor, you should have the right not to be called doctor. Okay?
Great.
And without further ado, I'll turn things over to the man from Alton that Joe Epstein and Jill Biden all agree is called the doctor with the news.
I'm not a doctor.
Well, here did you... That's brilliant. Someone give him a raise. That was so... I forgot we even had that bit. That's why they call him the doctor, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, stop calling me that. Hey there, Dennis here. Let's find out what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. And we begin with the governor.
The enemy is you.
Oh, well, that was rude.
Oh, hold on. I dropped my bottle cap. Hold on, going under the table.
There we go. No one can.
Oh, my God.
No one can see you. Okay.
There's a lot of dust under there.
You're
Oh,
giving,
God, just
giving away too much information.
Sorry about
No
that,
one can
Dave.
see you. All right. Today, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker will be delivering his 2:30 COVID-19 press briefing at the Thompson Center. Here's a quick recap on Monday's press briefing. A vaccine has arrived in Illinois. Governor Pritzker, tell us, what's the most complex thing about these first vaccine shipments?
The logistics of these first vaccine shipments are the most complex because maintaining ultra-cooled temperatures until the very last moment is essential. Once the packages are received by medical providers, they have only days to use the vaccines.
Ah, I see. Dr. Ezike?
As more vaccine becomes available, more individuals will be eligible to receive the vaccine. But until that time, please, let's exercise patience and understand that there may be others who will get the vaccine before you.
Interesting.
Well, I got to tell you, and I know I'm not alone in this one. I'm not that disappointed. I'm not at the front of the line about the vaccine. Just kind of want to see what what happens to the first people that takes the vaccine. I'm just putting that out there, being honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, I'm not at the front of the line, but then again, I'm not leaving this house until the vaccine is widely established. I just sneak out once a night to go for my infamous walk, and no one's around. It's dark, particularly nowadays. It's so cold. There's no one out. There's a guy and a dog every now and then.
Aw.
Yeah. So as soon as I see the guy and the dog, I put my mask on. Please, vaccine work. This nightmare is really, oh my God, it's just so freaking devastating to our country, to our world. So please, vaccine work. I'll be watching very carefully to see if it works.
All right, so this would be the point where I would tell you who is currently suing the governor or which business owner or politician has decided to go against Pritzker's pandemic protocol. But thankfully, we have no such stories to discuss. So let's just move right on to the news of the city of Chicago. We do have a public event listed for Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Mayor. Today, the mayor was at Loretto Hospital at 10:30 this morning to witness the first COVID-19 vaccines administered in Chicago. So, what do you know? A little bitty light at the end of this strange, dark tunnel.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
And I guess that little light is enough for the mayor and her Chicago public school team to try and get students and teachers back into the classroom. But as we learned last week, the Chicago Teachers Union isn't so quick to jump on board. They made a list of demands if this plan is to take place. Plans including lower COVID-19 test positivity rates, testing and vaccination protocols, and changes to both hybrid and remote learning. And here we are 1 week later, and Chicago Public Schools has responded to the teachers. Now, before we read the response, just to make sure we're all on board here, if you're new to the city of Chicago or if you're just beginning to follow political news in Chicago, first off, thank you for listening to the Ben Joravsky Show. He's Ben. What'd you think of that song of the day, huh? I'll Always Love You? It's good stuff. We hope you enjoyed that song of the day, but here's a quick history lesson for all of you. After the Chicago teachers' month-long strike back in November of 2019, the mayor and the Chicago Teachers Union really don't like each other. Isn't that right? CTU President Jesse Sharkey.
Right now,
What's that? Can't hear you. Well, anyway. So now that you understand all of that, listen to this blatantly anti-union announcement from the CPS, and you try to tell us that this is not a slap in the face to the Chicago Teachers Union. The CPS will be hiring 2,000 new teachers for $15 an hour to help reopen schools. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and Nadir Issa. Chicago Public Schools is looking to hire 2,000 new employees to take on pandemic-related duties and fill in gaps in staffing once schools return in person in January, a plan that's drawing a rebuke from the teachers union and that signifies one of the major challenges of reopening the third largest district in the nation supervision during a public health emergency. One of the primary responsibilities for half of the new positions will be student supervision, according to a job posting. That includes supervising students who are learning in person if the classroom teacher is teaching remotely. The posting says raising questions about what in-person instruction will look like for students who return to classrooms and signaling that the district intends to forge ahead with reopening despite a potentially massive number of staff requests for medical leave. All right, we have quotes here, one from the CPS and one from, well, maybe the coolest person alive in Chicago, CTU Vice President and dear friend of the Ben Joravsky Show, SDG, Stacey Davis Gates. Let's read the CPS quote first. Is it from CPS President Janice Jackson? No. Mayor Lori Lightfoot? No. It's the CPS HR guy. Human Resources Chief Matt Lyons. Okay, we've moved now from a slap in the face to a punch right in the nose. The HR guy. Matt Lyons said, quote, staffing is a concern. I don't want to pretend like it's not, but I'm confident about where we are right now and that we'll be able to provide a good learning experience for those who come in person. All right, now Stacey Davis Gates. Chicago Teachers Union Vice President Stacey Davis Gates said the part-time job posting was the first the union heard teachers might teach remotely to students in a classroom, a proposition she called slightly less terrible than forcing teachers to engage in learning from unsafe buildings. SDG said, quote, hiring people into a position that barely pays minimum wage with zero health care benefits in the middle of a pandemic seems particularly cynical. CPS can try to exploit low-wage temporary workers to fill in for staff who are not willing to sacrifice their lives for their livelihoods when they must instead come to the table and bargain collaboratively to land what we need to return to our school buildings and our students safely. Enforceable safety standards and real equity for Black and brown school communities starved of equity for years before this pandemic. My God, that lady's cool.
Wow. Where do I start? There's just so much to unpack. It's a column right there. That's this whole thing is a column. By the way, good job, D, summing it up. The article, CPS hiring 2,000 new workers. So they're not hiring new teachers. They're hiring minimum wage workers, $15 an hour. No health benefits, by the way. Don't have to live in Chicago. Throwing out the window all the requirements. You know, if you're a teacher in the city of Chicago, for the Chicago Public Schools, they have investigators that they pay, okay? That your tax dollars pay, I should say, whose job it is to investigate a claim that a teacher lives in Chicago when in fact he or she does not live in Chicago. Yeah, these investigators will go out and check it out so they can punish the teacher if the teacher is violating the residency requirement. But to just hire 2,000 people, residency requirement, open window, throw out. So bizarre. All right, break it down bit by bit. First of all, D, you said the hostility goes back to the strike. I will add a little amendment. I'd say the hostility goes back before the strike, and the Chicago teachers went in strong for Toni Preckwinkle in her race against Lori Lightfoot. I advised them not to. I said, guys, Toni Preckwinkle's no progressive. And I don't know why you're spending all your energy and efforts so vigorously fighting for her. But did the Chicago Teachers Union listen to me, D? No. Does any union or politician listen to me? Never. And I don't blame them, really, D, when you think about it. I'm just some lunatic in an attic overlooking a porta potty.
Well, when you put it that way.
Yeah. I still thought it was exceedingly unlikely that Toni Preckwinkle would be victorious. And you're wasting a lot of capital on an election that probably won't go your way, and you're really irritating Lori Lightfoot. And even though Lori Lightfoot was singing a different song back in 2019, D, and it wasn't I Will Always Love You. No. Could you imagine Lori Lightfoot singing that song?
Better than you, I guarantee it.
I don't know. I do not know about that, D. I heard her on that thing with the guitar. Remember that little
yeah, and we heard you sing the exact song you're talking about at the beginning of the show. I don't know.
I will. Oh, I like how the voice cracks when they say it. Anyway, Lori Lightfoot came to the hideout. Mick Dumke was my partner in crime in those days. And I asked her, I said, can Candidate Lightfoot, will you hold it against Stacey Davis Gates? I mentioned SDG at that moment. Will you hold it against her that she is supporting Tony Preckwinkle so vociferously? And Lori Lightfoot said, and I paraphrase, no, I understand how politics works. I understand that people say all kinds of mean, nasty things in the middle of a campaign, but when the campaign's over, we come together as a city. And I was like, what a great response. You know, so even though
she fooled you, bud.
she sure did. Even though my beloved Chicago Teachers Union and SDG did not listen to my advice. Okay, as I always tell Stacey when she comes on the show, she's probably so sick of me saying, you know, Stacey, I try to tell you. Anyway, they didn't listen to my advice, but even though they didn't listen to my advice, Lori Lightfoot looked me in the ID and she said, oh, no, I'm not going to hold it against them. And she also looked me in the eye and said, they are not going to pass that Lincoln Yards TIF deal if I'm elected mayor. Oops. So much for those promises. Open window, throw them out. And she has been waging a political war against Stacey Davis, in particular, Stacey Davis Gates. I don't think she has the animosity toward Jesse Sharkey that she has toward Stacey Davis Gates. She cannot stand Stacey Davis Gates. And so from the get-go, they've been battling the teacher, and they got a lot of support. I admit it. The number of people who are like with the Chicago Teachers Union in this city is dwindling. It's like me and Dennis. It's pretty much down to like,
hey, how's it going?
Dennis is a big time, folks don't know this, big time union guy. And I'm saying that for real, he is. So I'm like, come on, Lori Lightfoot. You agreed that you wouldn't, you said you weren't going to hold a grudge, and yet you obviously hold a grudge. And so that strike, we saw how much support Lori Lightfoot has. Both editorial boards, the Chicago newspapers with Lori Lightfoot 100% against the teachers union. The civic community of Chicago with Lori Lightfoot 100% against the Chicago Teachers Union. Most of the rich people in Chicago who fund the campaigns of so many prominent politicians like Lori Lightfoot with her 100%. My North Side neighbors, man, come on now. I mean, come on. Your teachers union is going a little too far. So most Northsiders are with Lori Lightfoot in this. So, you know, from a political standpoint, in terms of raising money and winning over the North Side, I think that Lori Lightfoot is, you know, ahead of the game. But from like a humanitarian, I care about kids in the Chicago public schools standpoint, waging war against the teachers is not helpful. It wasn't helpful when Rahm did it. It wasn't helpful when Daley did it at the end of his term. He was pretty cool with the teachers for most of his term, but then at the end, he lost his mind when he didn't get the Olympics. And he brought in Ron Huberman. Well, let's just not even discuss that phase of Mayor Daley's existence as mayor of Chicago. So Lori Lightfoot's determined to battle the Chicago Teachers Union, and she's being cheered on every step away by corporate and editorial Chicago. And so, folks, this decision to reopen the schools has nothing to do with what's in the best interest of Chicago public school children. I'll tell you why. Because nobody knows how dangerous it is to force teachers and students to go back into those old buildings with the bad ventilation systems that they have. Now I know, and I see them all the time, and I hear them all the time. There are activists who support charter schools, and there are teachers, no, not strike teachers. There are parents who send their kids to parochial schools who say, well, our schools are open, you know, and then they go on to say it's because we don't have to deal with the union. And that's what this is all about. This is about undercutting the union in the midst of a pandemic, taking advantage of a pandemic to win a battle against the Chicago Teachers Union. The obsession that powerful people in the city of Chicago have with the Chicago Teachers Union blows my mind. I can't think of one union that's just reviled by the rich and the powerful in the city of Chicago as much as the Teachers Union. They don't hate the firefighters union much. They
Hang tight, guys. He'll be back.
sorta, maybe. They don't love you guys that much, by the way. But they hate the teachers union. I've always felt they hate the teachers union because, well, they figured the teachers union was an easy target. You know, it's mostly women. And I also think, and I am taking a Sigmund Freud-like dive into the brains of the powerful people that run this city, that they think because it's a union run by women, it'd be an easier union to kick around. And so they've been kicking it around for all these years. And so essentially in the media right now, there are two people who stand with the teachers union. So yeah, I see Lori Lightfoot raising this fight. They say, oh man, we're doing this for the kids. Because low-income kids are falling further and further behind the more time they're not in a classroom. And they're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. This pandemic is just devastating to educational progress of all the children. Dennis talked about it when he was in Alton watching his nieces and nephews, or his nieces doing their online classes, how ridiculous it was, absurd it was.
Everybody was miserable.
Everyone's miserable. Yeah, the pandemic is miserable. But you know what? To the first point, and here's my fingers crossed, it's not going to last forever. So, editorial boards in Chicago, and civic community in Chicago, and really rich people who run the city in Chicago, and Mayor Lori Lightfoot, if you guys, and Janice Jackson, everyone at CPS, if you truly care about the poor kids in the public schools of Chicago, your ability to show how much you care doesn't end with the pandemic. Here's a radical thought. You could show how much you care about those kids after the pandemic. You say, oh my God, it's like they just learned that poor kids in a public school are disadvantaged in contrast to wealthy kids in public schools and private schools. It's like a light went on. All of a sudden, the people that run the Chicago public schools and the people who write the editorials for the downtown papers, it's like a light went on. Ding! Oh my God. Just in time to bash the Chicago Teachers Union.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
That's the light.
Yes, the light went on. Just in time to bash the Chicago Teachers Union. The light went on. Wait a minute. Guys, hold on. Did you realize that poor kids are at a disadvantage to rich kids? Oh my God, we just learned this. We got to get them back in the classroom. Guys, poor kids were always at a disadvantage in contrast to rich kids. And you'll have that opportunity to show how much you care about poor kids when the pandemic's over and the schools are open. You can hire more teachers so class sizes is smaller. More individual attention for kids. You can have after-school programs in every single school, tutoring for kids so that they can, when they fall behind, they can catch up. You can have art programs and drama programs and music programs and dance programs in every school. You could have after-school basketball, football, soccer, track, pay for it all with coaches. So kids are in a classroom, and then you could, hey, you want to be in the basketball team? You got to keep your grades up. And we're going to make sure you keep your grades up with these tutors. I mean, if you care so much about the kids, there's a lot you could do for them. But I don't know. I think you only care about the kids when you can use them to take a shot at the Chicago Teachers Union. The dirty Teachers Union. Get back in that building right now and teach those kids.
You look at their demands, it's like they're acting like they asked for like a Slurpee machine in every classroom or something. It seems fair. What they were asking for seems legit.
It did. And by the way, not that there's nothing wrong with a Slurpee machine in every classroom. I don't know. I can get behind that. But this one is, so here's the problem, folks. Okay? So the Chicago Public Schools has this hybrid model. They don't want to order parents to send their kid back to the school because they don't want to get the parents as mad as them as they've gotten the teachers mad. They don't care if the teachers are mad at them. They tell the teachers, you got to go in that classroom. If you don't go there, we're going to fire you. That's what they said. They can't say that to a parent. They can't say to the parent, you're going back to that classroom. If you don't go back to that classroom, I'm going to take your car. What else did she say? Drive it home. Whatever else she said. No, they can't do that. So they go, oh, well, if you don't want to go to the classroom, we're going to give you that great virtual education that your kid loves so much on TVs. But then if the teacher's doing that and you got kids in the classroom, who's going to be watching the kids in the classroom? A light went on. Another light went on at the Board of Education.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
I won't just turn the car around. I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to kick you out. And I'm going to make you walk home.
That's what they're going to do to teachers who don't show up to the classroom. Going to make you walk home, teachers. So now it's like, boss, we got a problem here. I could just see the great minds at the Chicago Public Schools. We got a problem here. What do we do with the kids in the classroom when the teacher's working on a computer with the kids who didn't come to the classroom? Let me think about this. Let me pause and think while the brown line passes. Hey, Mayor Pete. Well, Mayor Pete's eating the cinnamon roll.
So you said that at the opening. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Then I looked at the news like, oh, okay, I get it now. Mayor Pete, he's the new transportation guy.
Come on, man, I'm subtle here. Okay, I'm subtle. All right, work with me, D. Work with me. So they had this problem. And there's your solution. I know what we'll do. We'll just hire 2,000 guys, pay them $15 an hour, whether they've had any experience working with kids. Lord knows what their background is. We'll throw them into a classroom. They'll be just so happy they got a job. They won't care if they get COVID. We'll throw a mask on them. Do you have tests to test them? Test, masks. Who needs tests? I'm just going to, here you go. The teacher, this is your new classroom assistant, Billy Bob. He's going to help you with the kids. Has he had any experience with kids? No. So what? $15 an hour, no health benefits. All of a sudden there's money for this, D. Isn't that funny?
It's just like blatantly, it's like they had to have known that was going to get at their crawl. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, 15 an hour. Like, that's just a blatant. Yeah.
And let's go back to November when the strike happened and they wanted more nurses. And the editorial boards were telling them, shut up and take the money and go back in the classroom. Lori Lightfoot will give you nurses when she's ready to give you nurses. And they were like, we don't really have enough money. We can't commit the money for the nurses, okay? Because we broke. We spent the money on you teachers. Now all of a sudden, money? What? Tons of money. Hey, we'll hire 2,000 new workers at $15 an hour. And they wonder why no teacher in his or her right mind believes the stuff Chicago Public Schools says. This Lyons guy, what a piece of work. They threw the HR guy. Who's the HR guy in the office? Remember the HR guy? Come on, D. What's his name? I can see his face.
Which place? We've been...
No, the TV show, The Office.
Oh, I thought you meant like at CPT or at the Sun Times. Like, the HR guy. Oh, Toby. This guy's like Toby. Toby was like, he was always like, everybody was picking on Toby. Remember, this is like this guy. Who was the heavy guy? What did he do in the office? The big feller. There's two big fellers.
Who was the other big fella?
Stanley and someone on the line. What's the other big feller's name?
Stanley was a salesman. What did the other guy do? I forget. I can just see him.
Well, this came out of nowhere.
Well, because you said HR, and I thought of Toby. Was always they'd always take their problems to HR. Poor Lions, they dragged this guy out, and so they asked if additional adults coming in contact with several groups posed a new health and safety risk, and the HR guy Lions said, "quote." This is one of those minimal risks that it doesn't present any additional danger in any way. It's more an operational necessity. Got to give Dennis credit. Mixed message time. On one hand, Hunker down. Don't see your family. Don't go to bars. A bar opens. We're going to shoot that bar owner. It's your fault. Remember the commercials Thanksgiving time? Honey, you won't be able to see your grandchildren. But suddenly,
guys,
no problem.
You're getting the hits today, guys. You know what I mean here? I got the audio.
This is the right thing to do, even though it's a hard thing to do. Of course, I'll give your love to Amy and Viv and Hank. All right, love you, Mom. We'll talk on Thanksgiving.
Pause for sigh.
Bye-bye.
Pause for sigh. I tell you what. Was that Mayor Lori Lightfoot? Was that
Dawson's Creek?
Meryl Streep. I mean, the acting was so good. I didn't know who it was, you know. Pause for sigh. Somehow or other, you know, the uncle and the aunts and the grandfathers and the grandparents are dangers to the kids. But just 2,000 random guys taking off the street? No problem. Get in there. Oh, poor lions. Oh, there's no additional danger in any way. Okay, if you say so, lion. Poor guy.
Jesse Sharkey, please help us out here. Anything you got to say? Yeah?
Right now,
All right. If you can get in a building and maybe give us your response. We
Yeah,
can
I
hear
know,
you.
Jesse. I don't know. Those on the sidewalk press conferences. By the way, I like to point out that with the strike reveal is, yes, the editorial boards were with the mayor and hated the teachers union, and corporate Chicago hates the teachers union, and civic Chicago is like, oh, come on, guys, you know. Oh, God. And I think a lot of Northsiders just, you know, they have that contemptuous attitude about their attitude about teachers is a little like Joseph Epstein, the guy who wrote the story about how Jill Biden, how dare she call herself a doctor? She doesn't deliver babies. Only people who deliver babies get to be called themselves doctors. That's kind of like a Northsider's attitude about teachers. You know, come on. It's not a real profession. Like, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer and I live in the North Side. And teachers like work for me. Hello. So, you know, really interesting attitude that people have toward teachers. But those trucks with the honking horns kind of indicated to me that not everybody has the disdain for teachers as corporate Chicago, civic Chicago, North Side residents. Probably Northside residents who didn't vote for Kim Fox.
So you're saying
Pat O'Brien
regular
got a lot of votes.
You're saying regular people relate more with teachers rather than politicians.
Yes.
Wow. Holy cow. Guys, we're learning stuff today. We are
That's the truck drivers who love Dr. D. Yo, Dr. D. I'm not a doctor.
Uncle Bill? Come from
So
a long
anyway,
line of truck drivers, guys.
A lot of truck drivers supported. They saw Jesse Sharkey giving the press conference. They honked their horns, and poor Jesse couldn't get his words. And so anyway, yeah, what a joke. What a joke. The lengths to which the mayor and her school board will go to try to stick it to the teachers union.
Thank
in
you.
the name of helping children.
Yeah. Thank you, Office HR guy. Maybe we'll get the vending machine guy's thoughts in about 2 hours. All right, let's go to the live stream chat here. J. Marie, awesome as always. She brings up a very interesting question, point, I don't know, observation. I don't know, call it what you will. J. Marie on the live stream chat says, I love Stacey Davis Gates, but if she were to run for mayor, like we always talk about on the show, she says she would not win against Lori Lightfoot.
Well, but I presume J. Marie would vote for her based on that. That's a tough one, J. Marie.
Oh, I'm sorry. She said Lightfoot, L-I-E foot. Sorry. So sorry, Jim. Didn't mean to misquote you.
Yes, I remember that moment where Lori Lightfoot looked at me and goes, oh, Ben, come on. It's politics. I'll never hold a grudge against SDG.
She had a backwards hat on and a skateboard at the hideout. Guys, listen, all right? Let's talk.
That's true. A skateboard. Hey, everybody. I don't know. I mean, all the money would be with Lori Lightfoot. All the civic community would be with Lori Lightfoot. The editorial boards would be with Lori Lightfoot. The North Side, they love Lori Lightfoot. So it would be an uphill battle. Absolutely. Uphill battle. Anybody who's like looking out for the interests of poor kids and teachers, not going to do really well with the powers that be in the city of Chicago. Yeah. So it would be an uphill battle, dude.
All right, and before we move on, let's talk about it here. It kind of broke, like, while the show was going on. Mayor Pete, the transportation secretary. What do you think about that, Ben? I feel like his answer may be like, I don't know, Uber for, like, everything.
Well, first there's the relief. And the relief is that Joe Biden did not give that position to Rahm Emanuel. You know, Rahm was clearly hustling for it. Really working hard to get that gig. You notice that, D? Having all his friends call Joe Biden. You know, it's like Obama calling Joe Biden on his behalf. Durbin calling Biden on his behalf. Biden's like, oh, my God, you're kidding me, right? What was it, a week ago? Civil rights leaders met with Joe Biden. Al Sharpton was one of them, and they just laid it down. They go, dude, if you really just want to insult us, put the Laquan McDonald mayor in transportation, okay? Like, the guy buried evidence of the shooting of Laquan McDonald. We still wouldn't have seen that video. By the way, we're going to be talking about another one it's so horrific with Maya. She was the one who brought it to my attention, and I got to give Channel 2 News a lot of credit. Dave Savini, great investigative story about a woman that was the subject of some just awful, harassment. I don't even know begins to do justice to the word, by about 9 police officers burst into her house, and she was just coming out of the shower. She was naked. Anyway, we'll be talking about with Maya. But they resisted the effort to release that video, just like Rahm resisted the effort to release the Laquan McDonald video. And, you know, guys, I'm mostly a Democrat. You know, I support Democrats 99.9% of the time. But every now and then, one of my beloved Democrats, who's in this case not so beloved, will do something so horrific that it's like, you gotta punish him. And there's been no punishment for Rahm for burying that video. The only reason he released it was because Cook County judge ordered him to. So what happens? The only punishment is he knew enough. He couldn't run for re-election, so he knew he would lose. So he goes out. Now he's on the George Stephanopoulos program. They never, you know what I mean? It's like they conceal evidence of a murder. So what? Murder. Hey, Rahm, what do you think about the electors with Chris Christie? Oh my God. Think about guys who've skated through life with no accountability for the stuff they've done. So it would have been politically the kiss of death for Joe Biden. I don't know about the kiss. That's dramatic. It would have caused him more problems than he needed. The risks outweighed the rewards. So Buttigieg is the transportation secretary. I have absolutely no idea what he knows about transportation.
Right? Okay. Like, I just feel like, Mayor Pete, what do you think about this? I don't know. Can't you Uber?
Yeah, I know. He seems more like an Uber guy and not a... Yeah, I love Uber, but I feel like I diversify.
I feel like, you know, with Biden, like, being really old, like, man, an old guy's president, I don't know. But I think maybe I wanted an old guy's transportation secretary. One, you know, that kind of rides the bus. I don't know, you know what I mean? A young guy, I don't know. Just can't you take a lift?
Or a broke guy. How about a broke guy?
Guys, let's get the campaign going right now. I'll run.
Dennis would be perfect. The guy just took the train the other day.
Now, a lot of you people aren't talking about the bicycle, all right? Let me walk you through how to ride this thing.
Yeah, I mean, oh, God, I don't want to get myself in trouble in South Bend, but did they even have public transportation in South Bend? Quick, call Henry Davis.
Right.
See if we get Henry on the line, get his thoughts. Oh, my God, you know he's going to have something to say about this. So, yeah, I have absolutely no idea what qualifications Mayor Pete brings to this job other than he's not Rahm Emanuel. And that'll take you far in this world, at least at this particular moment. Oh, I'm not Rahm. I didn't conceal evidence of a murder. Oh, But you run things for a while. But you're right, D. I don't even know if Mayor Pete's ever been on a subway or. Well, he was in Chicago.
Well, and he was on the Brown line about 15 minutes ago.
That's true. Oh, God, I forgot that. Yes. Good point. Anyway, so my guess, it's payback because Mayor Pete, supported Joe as soon after he dropped out. Remember that, D? Dropped out of the race, supported Joe Biden right away. He didn't go to Bernie. Oh, there was a big surprise. Anyway, listen, man, I'm just relieved it's not Rahm. No, tomorrow they'll put Rahm in charge of some. They'll put him in charge of some other department. I can't think of commerce or something. God help us all. I don't know.
Well, don't be surprised in February if everybody's riding those stupid scooters around. Mayor Pete's the transportation.
Yeah. Guys, can't you just take a scooter? Lyft works really well for me. I love Lyft. That's my favorite. Wait, you mean there's something called a bus? Never heard of it. Oh, God, Mayor Pete. Transportation.
All right, we got one more Chicago story before we move on to Madigan Gate, the time when utility giants ComEd admitted to arranging jobs, contracts, and payoffs to the associates of Democratic House Speaker, one Michael Joseph Madigan. The following comes from the Chicago.
Wait, what is that sound? Is that what is that sound?
Those are prison bars.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, that's what I thought. He hasn't gone to prison, okay?
I know.
He hasn't even been indicted, all right?
The guy won't give interviews. I have no audio of the man, okay?
Feeling a flip-flop coming, Dave. Feeling a flip-flop.
Give an interview for the love of God, Mr. Madigan. The following comes, but before we do that, the following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and Fran the Woman Spielman. The headline reads, Lightfoot accused of trying to water down pivotal criminal justice reform. Mayor Lightfoot's administration was accused Monday of attempting to water down a pivotal criminal justice reform recommended by the task force on policy or on police accountability she co-chaired after the police shooting of Laquan McDonald. Alderman Leslie Hairston, Ben of what board?
Come on, D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's correct.
Alderman Leslie Hairston wants to follow the task forces led by requiring anyone arrested by Chicago police to be informed of their right to be represented by free legal counsel and allowed to make a reasonable number of phone calls to attorneys and family members within 1 hour of arrival at the place where they are being held. The Chicago Police Department would be required to abide by the 1 hour rule unless exceptional circumstances make it impossible to do so. Hairston's ordinance would further require arrestees be provided with a, quote, complete list of the names and phone numbers of nonprofit and government legal service providers. Exceptions to the 1 hour rule would need to be recorded in the arrest report and in CPD's internal computer system, along with the justification. At a hearing Monday of the City Council's Committee on Public Safety, Hairston said Lightfoot was trying to weaken the 1 hour rule in an attempt to avert costly litigation. I have the quote from Hairston, and Ben, you take it from here. Hairston said, quote, my ordinance just basically says that you're entitled to a phone call within 1 hour of being arrested. That has been rejected by the city, and they have been adding more layers of difficulty to the ordinance that is proposed as a substitute to my ordinance, which I have rejected and will continue to reject, and I think my colleagues will feel the same way. I will continue to resist the law department's and the police department's effort to try and make it convenient for them when people are unable to go free. We need this. This is progressive. Anything else is not progressive.
Yeah, I just want to make that distinction. An hour after being arrested or an hour after being brought into the police station. An hour after you're literally arrested. I could see all kinds of difficulties with that. But an hour after you're brought in, come on. I don't see the impediment to allowing someone a phone call. And don't you get one phone call? Isn't that what we've always been told? You get one phone call. And so I've had conversations with people like, who would I call? You know what I'm saying? Who would I call? I'd probably call someone that I guarantee would pick up the phone.
Well, I'm out.
Dennis sees it coming. I don't know this guy. I remember I met this lawyer years ago, a criminal defense lawyer at the jailhouse lawyer, and I watched him operate. I told him, I go, dude, if I ever get arrested, you're the first person I call, because this guy really knew how the system worked. You know what I mean? He's like, but and again, I don't know why Lori Lightfoot doesn't sign on to this. Again, one more time at the hideout. I remember there were people asking, they were really coming in hard with their questions. Are you a cop? And I thought she did a great job of handling those questions. And it's pretty clear that Lori Lightfoot, very smart person, and knew what the people at the hideout wanted to hear on many levels. And this was just one of them. So yeah, I'm with you, Leslie Hairston. I got to give Leslie Hairston a little shout out. Leslie Hairston been an alderman for a long time. Going back to the Daley days, and she was one of the 5 aldermen who voted against the parking meter deal. How about that? She's still fighting the good fight. So Leslie Hairston, hats off to you on this one. And yeah, I do not see a reason why Lori Lightfoot would be against this. You know, again, the whole thing about litigation. It's going to save the city money. Oh my God! If you see this video that Maya sent to me about the way the police burst into this woman's apartment and treated her, it's like the least of their worries is giving someone a phone call within an hour of being sent to the police station.
Yeah, I was going to say, this seems like something that Maya's going to want to talk about here in a few minutes. So we'll put a button on it there for now. And also, to the latest in Madigan Gate. We'll talk about that after our interview with Maya. We're getting close to the top of the hour here, or the bottom of the hour. I don't know. That always confused me in radio. Wait, so is it the top of the hour? I don't know. But anyway, so we want to remind everybody that you can follow us on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can always send us an email, bennyjshow@gmail.com. In fact, you mentioned it earlier, Ben. We received an email from Stephen.
Yes. Thank you very much for reminding me.
Yeah,
and that was really good of you, D. I had forgotten that. And that was really good. Now I got to find it. Hold on. Little embarrassing when I have to look for something.
That's all right. Hey, guys, you should be like Stephen and reach out to the Ben Joravsky Show, bennyjshow@gmail.com. Stephen sent us, he always sends us a lot of emails. Very informative. We really appreciate you, Stephen. Did that give you enough time?
Yes.
All right. Nice.
All right. Yeah. First of all, he also sent us a funny rap about Rod Blagojevich, which we'll play some other time. But then he wrote this: some news from the weekend. Headline. It's his headline. It's time to change how we talk about Trumpism. Some news from the weekend. Proud Boys march on Washington, D.C. and Olympia, Washington. Per their initiation rituals, they beat the hell out of counter demonstrators with shots fired in Olympia. Also in D.C., a Black Methodist church was besieged and vandalized, and the head of the Texas GOP soft-pedaled secession again. Typically, these stories are met with approximately, wow, they sure are crazy, and then jokes. Amusement is no longer a sane response. We have been so desensitized by propaganda about Islamic terrorism and uninstructive accounts of the mid-century fascism that we do not see what is brewing in front of us. Trumpists are at war with America. Decades of lone wolf attacks from the Murrah Federal Building to the Church of Life Synagogue are coalescing into organized violence against obstacles to a white Christian ethno-state as depicted in the in the Turner Diaries. Note, anyone who isn't hip to the Turner Diaries no more lives in the real world than flat earthers and anti-vaxxers. You can say, nay, must keep cracking jokes. We also must be more honest about how hot it has gotten in our proverbial lobster pot. Stephen, it's a good point. It is easy to crack jokes about MAGA. I've been known to do it myself. Now, I am distinguished between your run-of-the-mill MAGA, who is going to fall prey for that email, that solicitation email that I talked about receiving at the outset, and then the MAGA guys, Proud Boys, who show up and try to engage counter protesters in fights and go around trying to intimidate electors with their weaponry and show up for Operation Gridlock rallies with Confederate flags and their weaponry. Yeah, it's a scary time. And the far right element within the Republican Party is out of control, and the Republican Party seems hesitant, by and large, to stand up to them. Afraid. They're afraid they've go too far to denounce such antics, to put it mildly. They'll lose MAGA support, or that Donald Trump will tweet against them. So this is really about the Republican Party, the leaders of the Republican Party, the Mitch McConnells of the world. The Darren Bailey's here in Illinois. I've got to give Adam Kinzinger credit, the congressman from the 16th Congressional District in the Rockford area. I admittedly would not have voted for him, but, I would have voted for Danny B. But he really has taken a strong stand against Trumpism, and he'll probably run for governor. There's a good chance he's going to run for governor, and that will be helpful, because I believe the Democrats are very vulnerable right now in the state of Illinois, and Madigan Gate has a lot to do with that. But by and large, the Republicans have such little credibility in this state, and particularly in Cook County and DuPage County, that it'd be really hard to see a Republican like Darren Bailey defeating J.B. Pritzker, or the other front runner, if he ever gets the right to run, Rod Blagojevich, who's perhaps the most popular former Democrat in the Republican Party these days. But Adam Kinzinger could give Pritzker a run for the money, because he has credibility on this particular issue. So, Stephen, you're absolutely right. It's no joking matter. And when that video, I don't know if you saw it, D, of the Proud Boys chasing a black man in Washington, and he has a knife. Did you see this one where the man pulls out a knife? He actually stabbed, I think, 4 Proud Boys. He was arrested. The guy with the knife was arrested. We're all the Kyle Rittenhouse supporters defending this guy, who's completely surrounded by Proud Boys who are pounding the hell out of him. So anyway, good point, Stephen. I see Maya Dukmasova has joined us, but I think we'll take a break and then we'll bring her on, right?
Absolutely. More Madigan Gate coming up and more marijuana news. Maya Dukmasova coming up after the break. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from, my apartment and Ben's attic. Don't go anywhere.
I'm a Trumpocrat. Trumpocrat, that's right.
When people want proof that the world ain't flat, we'll just give them their money back. Oh yeah!
I won't just turn the car around. I'm going to shut it off, I'm going to kick you out, and I'm going to make you walk home.
We heard what you want to do. Now we'll tell you what's best for you. That's the story from the editorial board. A little tip for the working man. Your employers are all our friends. That's the story from the editorial board.
Page coverage.
That's the story from the editorial board.
how did you go from sharing stories over the years to deciding to write a book?
Good question, Mayor. Good question.
When people want proof that the world ain't flat, we'll just give them their money back. Oh yeah!
I'm a Trumpocrat. Trumpocrat, that's right.
That's the story from the editorial board. That's the story from the editorial board. That's the story from the editorial board. That's the story from the editorial board.
I want an answer. It's not something you ignore.
I think you're 100% full of shit, is what I think. If you think we
No offense, well, fuck you then.
Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Reader and the Chicago Federation of Labor. Benny J, take it away.
Maya is joining us. Maya Dukmasova from My Beloved Reader is joining us. Ace feature writer, ace investigative reporter, my partner in crime from First Tuesday. And she really wanted to spend the time. She personally asked me, she wanted to dedicate this entire segment to talking about Dr. Jill Bidengate. But I said, Maya, no. We're not going to be talking about Dr. Jill Bidengate under any circumstances. You cannot make me talk about Dr. Jill Bidengate. Just kidding, Maya. Welcome to the show. I know you don't want to talk about Dr.
Yeah,
Jill
I
Biden.
don't want to talk about it.
Okay. Can I just quote your text, which was really funny? Can I please quote it? Can I just, because I sent out a list of ideas to talk about. I just was curious because it's the kind of thing, it's very riffable for Maya. And she goes, quote, I really don't want to spend much time talking about it. It's really very stupid. I haven't been... I'm sorry. I haven't been following it besides hearing about it when the story ran. I just want to say some of your best riffs are on the inanity of articles or issues that are being widely discussed in the on the internet, or just widely discussed. But anyway, we'll put that to the side. There's some very serious things that you've raised.
Yeah.
And
there's some really serious shit going on in the city, like over the last 24 hours. And I really feel like it would be a better use of our time to talk about that.
Yes, I am with you 100%. And I want to thank you for sending me the story. Let's give a shout out to Dave Savini, Channel 2. A very compelling story that ran. I guess it ran last night, and Maya shared it with me about a woman, Anjanette Young. Why don't you tell? There's so much going on here, but why don't you just give some of the details on what happened?
Yeah,
to Anjanette Young?
I mean, basically, I woke up this morning, and this is what I woke up to seeing the story online, and I really wonder if this is going to become something like, Lori Lightfoot's Laquan McDonald moment, because basically. What CBS 2 ran was a video of a police raid that the city was trying really hard to get the TV station not to show. Apparently, they sued them to try to prevent them from showing it. The body cam footage from a team of like some kind of tactical officers basically shows them busting into a woman's apartment. They were looking for somebody else, and they got the wrong apartment. They busted into this woman's apartment. She was in the process of changing after work. She was naked when they broke her door down. And over the next 20 minutes, these cops basically, they handcuffed her naked. It was like a dozen male cops, and she kept telling them they had the wrong place. Periodically there was somebody who would put some kind of piece of clothing over her, but basically this woman was humiliated and forced to be in a position to keep repeating that she was just living there by herself and she had nothing to do with anything. And it turned out when Dave Savini and the rest of the team at CBS 2 did some digging that the the cops came to her address because they got some incorrect information from an informant about somebody else who allegedly had some kind of some weapons or something in his apartment, a guy that lived in the same complex as this woman. So these cops got the address wrong. And then at the very end of the footage that CBS 2 showed, there's a discussion amongst the cops about how it's possible that they didn't even have a warrant to conduct this raid, that this thing wasn't actually authorized. And the whole incident went down in 2019 in February. The body cam footage shows February 22nd, 2019. And it's just like a situation that's very, very similar to really the Breonna Taylor case. Mm-hmm. This is a police raid based on a warrant, and whether there were intentional or unintentional mistakes that went along with the warrant affidavit, this is how these dominoes start. And there was CBS 2 ran an interview with Anjanette Young, the woman whose house was busted into. She's a social worker, and it's really a really disgraceful story. And I mean, I just can see, like, throughout the video, it's fair warning to everybody, this is like extremely difficult to watch. There's like, I don't know if you've got any kind of trauma associated with this sort of thing. I don't recommend watching the video, but throughout the whole thing, she's like telling them that they have the wrong house, and she's like crying and yelling, as is totally understandable. And these cops are just like telling her to calm down. They're being like defensive with her. And the whole time this lady is like standing naked in her living room. Handcuffed with her hands behind her back. Finally, then they like let her put some clothes on, and then they still handcuff her before they spend some, it's like 20 minutes later before they're out of her home. They busted the door down so badly that they couldn't even fix it. So the door wasn't workable anymore. So I guess this lady is suing the city now, but it's just like, I feel like there has not been enough attention paid in the whole sort of world of journalism around all the ways that the criminal legal system is so messed up. There hasn't been enough attention paid to these warrant affidavits, because in order to like raid someone's house, in order to arrest someone, in order to search someone's house, cops need a warrant. And in order to get the warrant, somebody on the team of cops working on the case has to give an affidavit, like a sworn statement to a judge about what are the grounds, like what is the probable cause for getting the warrant. And time after time, what we see is like cops just lie on these affidavits, or they give incorrect information. In this case, based on Savini's reporting, it seems like they got this information from this informant who messed up the address, but they made no effort to actually verify what the informant told them, like to actually double check the address. So it's a really crazy story. I mean, I think it's a little window into how regular people's lives, Black people's lives, intersect with the justice system on a regular basis in really, really like horrifying, traumatic ways. I mean, this lady literally this happened to her because she lives in this apartment complex. She has no relation whatsoever to the actual person they were targeting. I just think that this is, and the fact that the law department tried to suppress this is really kind of adds insult to injury. I assume that their justification for this had something to do with trying to protect the privacy of this woman, but obviously it's to protect, the safe face for the mayor's office on how terribly botched this was.
Well, let's just break that down a little bit, because there's a couple issues that pop into my mind. One is the raid itself and the way the police officers, and I think there were 9 of them, treated Anjanette Young. Put that to the side. The second issue has to do with the resistance to releasing the video. And I'm just going based on what I read, Dave Savini's report. I read the actual report a couple times. It was Anjanette Young herself, as part of her lawsuit, who was seeking the release of the police video. So if the city was arguing that they were doing this to prevent further humiliation of Anjanette Young, then that's a very deceiving argument to make, because she was the one seeking the video as part of her lawsuit. So so that's not a realistic argument to make if the city is. So this is the point that you were making, Amaya. Get your comments on this when you said it's like could be Lori Lightfoot's Laquan McDonald moment. Again, this raid happened. Lori Lightfoot was not mayor of Chicago when this raid happened. It happened in February 2019. However, she is mayor of Chicago when the lawsuit was filed and when the appeal from Anjanette Young was made to get a hold of the video. And I think every cop, Maya, had their cameras on. There were a lot of cameras on, there were a lot of angles that you were watching this video, and they resisted that. And that's Savini doesn't go into that part of the story. I'd love to see an update on that. Maybe you'll write the story, an update on what was the reason the city gave for resisting the FOIA request, and how many appeals did she have to go through before the city turned it over. But that, I think, is what you were getting at when you said it has parallels to Laquan McDonald, because it was Mayor Rahm who battled the release of the Laquan McDonald video, the video that showed Jason Van Dyke shooting Laquan McDonald, and only released it after a Cook County judge ordered him to in a FOIA case that was fired by a couple of activists. Is that what you were getting at when you made?
And right. It's just it's an example of the city trying to suppress a tape that looks really, really bad. It looks, I mean, I don't know what, this is, the other thing is the kind of officers that perform these raids, like, this isn't just like some like Joe Schmo fresh out of the academy cops. Like, you have to kind of qualify to get onto these tactical teams. So supposedly these are people with some kind of expertise and some kind of record of good performance, whatever you might mean by good in this job, but good performance on this job. And the sheer incompetence that this video captures is really horrifying. I mean, this lady could have ended up dead. Like, if she was, I mean, at one point, this was my thought process. Like, if this woman wasn't naked, like literally naked in her own home, I mean, they could have, if she had made any wrong move with her hand, they could have interpreted this as like a person reaching for a weapon. Especially because it clearly takes them like several minutes for the gears to turn in their heads to even like grasp the fact that they were in the wrong place. The amount of like adrenaline that these videos capture, like the sheer like brute force with which these cops are moving, the sort of like just like the inertia in the way that they go about this process is really frightening. And if instead of a naked lady, it was a dude. Or what if it was someone who had a gun in their house because they had a FOIA card and they had rightfully had a gun in their house? What if it was actually just another Black man in his 20s who had a gun in his house? Not the target of the investigation, but just some other person. It could have very well been just a random other person who might have just by happenstance have had a weapon in his house. He might have reached for a weapon in his home after their door was busted down. Like, these are all like reactions that people might have. And, you don't know that, like, a person might be already have some kind of trauma in their lives, some reason to fear, where they could have like an intense reaction to having their door busted down. Like, this is just such an unsafe and crazy situation. And this lady, like, I feel like it's just like a miracle that she didn't get physically hurt in this whole process, and the situation didn't escalate further. And it just makes you wonder that, like, how often do these raids go wrong? And then, like, how often in Breonna Taylor's case, I mean, it was a raid that went wrong. There was a lie on a warrant affidavit that connected her apartment to her ex-boyfriend and some packages he was supposedly receiving at her place, which was a lie on the affidavit. The detective lied to a judge about the reason for raiding her apartment. And then they go in and, you know, her actual boyfriend does have a gun, is like a legal, you know, licensed carrier of a weapon. And, you know, the rest is history. So it's just all messed up. It's all messed up how police work gets done. And, you know, it's, I don't know. I don't know how many more of these kinds of stories we need to see in order to start really, in order for someone like Lori Lightfoot, who, you know, supposedly ran on some platform for progressive change, to start handling law enforcement differently.
Well, you know, once it was explained to me, and it was Peter Cunningham who explained this to me. And Peter Cunningham, as Maya knows, was on our show at the First Tuesday, and he was a speechwriter for Mayor Daley. And as such, he was one of the few people in the Mayor Daley administration who would ever offer me insights on how the city really works. But I remember him telling me that mayors are very cautious. I think afraid is the word he may have used. It's been a while since he had the conversation about confronting the police department on high profile cases. And they stay clear of them. And I was there at the hideout when Lori Lightfoot said that, you know, that things would have to change and would change if she was elected mayor of Chicago when it came to policing. And she talked about her time on the police board and how that moved her, motivated her to run for mayor, and she wanted to reform the system. Remember, I don't know if you were there that night, Maya, but somebody said, you know, you're a cop. Remember, she had to confront the cop question. And I thought she was quite convincing. And the fact that the city resisted so long just to release this video shows that maybe stuff hasn't changed nearly as much as it should have. Again, this raid happened before Lori Lightfoot was mayor of Chicago. But
I mean, if her position is going to be that this has nothing to do with her administration, I feel like it's incumbent on her to demonstrate to the public what changes have been implemented that this kind of thing can't and doesn't happen on her watch.
Fair enough.
You know, that's what my question would be for her. If she's gonna claim that this had nothing to do with her, well, what, you know, how are these raids carried out now?
Yeah. But to the point about not releasing the video itself, I can hear the advice of the lawyers right now, Maya. You know what I'm saying? Don't release that video. That hurts our case. We'll have to pay out more. So as opposed to trying to change the culture that leads to raids like that, they try to save money on the back end, if you follow what I'm saying, by battling to keep the video from being released, and which is the same argument that was at play with Laquan McDonald and the video. So in many ways, nothing has changed. Very tough video to watch, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, look, like this is going to end up costing the taxpayers of the city of Chicago probably millions of dollars. I mean, I don't know what kind of settlement this lady can expect, but you're probably right that it'll be more than if she would have gotten than if this hadn't gone public. And she deserves every penny of that money for what she was put through. But the sort of like, I mean, the fact that these guys might have not even had a warrant before we even get to the part that they didn't do their due diligence with the way that they applied for this warrant. But since apparently it seems like maybe they didn't even have a warrant to do this, and it's going to cost taxpayers millions of dollars to make up for this bullshit. Like, I just, you know, like when do the cops change how they operate? Like, when does that part of the equation start changing?
Well,
I mean, you don't have an answer any more than I do, but
No.
that's the question I have.
And I remember having similar thoughts when I watched the full George Floyd video. I don't know if you've watched the whole video. Over time, they've released pretty much all the footage of the encounter between the police officers in Minneapolis and George Floyd, of course, led to his death. But before you got to that part, there's that moment where the police officers showed up and started knocking on the window of his car and were exceedingly abusive toward him in the way they talked to him, the way they treated him. And for what? I think the accusation, what he was perhaps passed on a counterfeit $20 bill. It was, you know what I'm saying? It was like, how did that warrant that kind of treatment? And it's just this whole approach towards policing that has to change, my humble opinion. And
and I think that, this case, what I would like caution people about as we continue a discussion of this situation is that our attention is now being drawn to this problem, this team of police officers, this way of conducting raids, this, the bad paperwork, the lies on the warrant affidavits, the bad investigative work, all of these problems, right? Like our attention is now being drawn to this because of who the victim is. Because the victim in this case is somebody who the media can present as like a respectable, middle-aged, innocent Black woman who's a professional person, a social worker, and she got, caught up in this thing that there's just no gray area. Like this woman is just in her home getting changed and this happens to her completely out of nowhere, right? But I think that the horror of this, the sort of the way that the victim in this case is this totally innocent woman, should not distract us away from the horror of the circumstances. Because as I said before, this situation would have not been any less horrific if, it would have even not been any less horrific if they were raiding the right place, but they had lied on the warrant affidavit to do the raid. You know what I'm saying? The situation isn't any better if we can identify with the victim less. Because on the law enforcement side, I think these things keep happening because the cops rely on the fact that the targets and the victims of their actions are not going to garner much sympathy. So then it takes a case like this, or Breonna Taylor, or George Floyd, to sort of mobilize public sympathy for the people on the receiving end of this. But this lady was just a random lady. And the messed up thing here is not because this happened to her, but because this happened. And it could have happened to someone who was not someone who, could have been presented as this kind of perfectly innocent victim. And I would urge people to think less about the fact that this woman didn't deserve this and more about the fact that if the cops can get away with this, what else are they getting away with? When the victim is somebody who's a little, less of a perfectly upstanding citizen.
I hear you on that, Maya. Very brutal. I urge everybody be aware. It's a very upsetting video to watch what happened to Anjanette Young, and they handcuff her. She's naked, and then at some point, her hands behind her back. Somebody thinks, "Oh, maybe we should cover up this naked woman." So they put a quilt around her, but since she's handcuffed behind her back, the quilt keeps falling off. Very upsetting footage indeed, and lots of questions, particularly for Lori Lightfoot's administration. Why did they fight so hard to conceal it? So we'll be following this story. Another story that you alerted to me to, although in this case I'd actually seen it already, was in Chalkbeat. A little shout out to Chalkbeat, story they did about the city, Mayor Lori Lightfoot getting a personal appeal from one of her supporters to sell the city computers. Looked like old-fashioned pay-to-play. Why don't you talk a little bit about the Chalk
That
Beat story?
classic Barbara Byrd Bennett style CPS corruption. So my understanding of the situation is that, here's my take on this thing. It's in the heat of the crisis when suddenly the school system needs to deliver like tens of thousands of computers to kids. I can see how the situation plays out where, Lori says like, okay, I know a guy who will help us. Everything is done super, super fast without much attention to detail. And then we wind up in this situation where like a bunch of the computers are defective and the city is getting overcharged and it's a no bid contract situation. And it looks like it's all pay to play because the guy was a donor. I know it might sound strange that I'm making some kind of like give Lori the benefit of the doubt type of argument, but my point isn't really that. My point is that I think it's interesting that she ran on this like promise to bring in the light and be a different kind of mayor. But when like the rubber hits the road and she's in a position to have to make these kinds of massive decisions so quickly, like she's no better than anybody else. She's making the same kind of dumb mistakes as all her predecessors have. So I just wonder if this will knock her down a peg in terms of her like high and mighty attitude towards Chicago corruption, because here she is doing, the classic as a, ketchup-less hot dog. No bid contract with the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
Put that on a poppy seed bun.
By the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting ketchup on your hot dog. If that's what you like, go ahead, do it, Chicagoans. I hear what you're saying. And I appreciate you bending over backwards, Maya, to give Lori the benefit of the doubt. But one, you would have thought that CPS would have had some kind of strategy for distributing computers in the middle of the pandemic when they knew the schools would be shut down. Just saying, throwing that out there. It's not as though this caught them off guard. And number two, this is straight out of like Ed Burke, Michael Madigan, Barbara Byrd Bennett, the list goes on and on. Somebody feels like the proper way to do these things is to cut through the bureaucracy, go straight to the mayor, go to the mayor. And you know what? When I first saw the headline, Maya, my first reaction was, I think I may have told you this. Oh, this good-hearted rich guy was donating computers. That's what I thought. I thought, no, he wasn't donating computers. He was so naive me. I'm like, I thought it was like, a nice warm-hearted story. Let me give you my computers. Like, I got thousands of computers that I don't need anymore. He's all right. Maybe I can whittle off 10%, but I can't go lower than that. And I gotta say, in contrast to the Anjanette Young story about the police breaking in to Anjanette Young's apartment, the wrong apartment, this you can chuckle at this, you can laugh at this. This is like classic Chicago. But yes, you were with me, Maya. I may remind you of this when Lori Lightfoot took the oath of office. We were there. We were there together at that pavilion on the near south side, built with your taxpayers' funds, ladies and gentlemen. And because DePaul really needed an arena for its basketball team. And now nobody can go to the arena anyway. And you were there, and we heard Lori Lightfoot said, "Let in the light." And she said she made fun of the aldermen. Those days are over. Get rid of alderman and prerogative. Now we have mayoral prerogative. Just email the mayor. So yeah, I don't think there'll be much fallout for this. I think folks on the north side love Mayor Lori Lightfoot with a passion that is a little hard to understand.
It's not their kids that are getting messed up old laptops.
Well put. Could not argue with that at all. And Lori Lightfoot thought this was an acceptable way to do things. To get an email from a guy and, hey, public schools, do something about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, good. So we'll see where that one leads. And finally, good news in Maya Land. Your book is coming out.
My book is out. My book is out. It's available to order. If you go to chicagoreader.com/ Maya Book. Literally, that's the URL, chicagoreader.com/Maya Book. That will take you to our online store, and you can order a hard copy. You can order a PDF if you prefer to do it on an e-reader, but it's a collection of my writing on housing issues between 2014 and this year. And it's kind of like my greatest hits on housing, and every penny from the sale of this book is going to support the reader. So I really encourage everyone to get it. You've got your own best of greatest hits collection coming out as well, if I'm not mistaken. You're the next in line. We've already had our colleagues Lior Galil and Mike Sula drop their books. So you're next in line.
Yeah, I am next in line. But is your last a classic in this collection? We talked about it. Something you witnessed yourself, or is that not considered a house?
No, that's in there. That just made it in there before the deadline, before we had to finish laying everything out. So yeah, the story about the lockout that I witnessed is in there.
Yeah, it was a pretty remarkable story.
Also, everyone should pick up the Reader, this current issue that's out in the boxes now, because I've got a story in there, follow up on my continued investigation of Pangea, Chicago's biggest evictor, about all the messed up things happening in their corporate office. So urge everyone to check that out as well. That's not in the book.
That's not in the book. All right. Get your copies. As Maya says, the money goes to help the reader, our beloved reader, which is, we're doing everything we can to stay alive during these difficult times. And I just want to take this moment to say, Maya and I will not be doing a First Tuesday show in January, but we will return in February. Lord knows who our guests will be, but we will have some guests in February. And I'm presuming, Maya, the pandemic will still be with us. The vaccines will not have magically erased all the precautions that we need to take. And so it'll be another virtual one. Don't you think that will be the case?
Yeah, I think it's probably pretty likely.
And how was the first one? Just an overall review. Everybody can download it, but what was the experience like?
I think that we had a very good discussion with Peter Cunningham and Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez. We had a good participation of people in the chat. We seem to have a good conversation. It's not the same as being all together, but I think that as far as an online event goes, it was pretty lively and interesting. Did you feel the same?
Yeah, it's funny. My column that I'm doing for a year and end issue talks about all the things I'm looking forward to getting back on in the coming year. Instead of looking back at the horrific year that just was, I'm looking forward to things that I'll be doing in the coming year that I haven't been able to do in a while. And one of them are live hideout shows with you, Maya, and that dynamic that you have when you do a live show where you hear the audience. They may gasp in disbelief at something that is said. They may laugh. Somebody may feel compelled to burst out with an exclamation. That what makes it unique. And with the servers going around, serving people their booze, and just that element of the live club. I really miss that. That said,
yeah,
I thought there was the old spirit. I was on. You can't see it. It's on our podcast. You can hear it, and it's the Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez and Peter Cunningham discussing the future of the Democratic Party. How far to the left should it go? Is it possible to move any further to the left without alienating the center, or will the center force Joe Biden to go to the right, and will that alienate the left? And what's the compromise? Anyway, it was a good discussion on that. So given the circumstances, you can't see it, but I was on the stage at the Hideout where we traditionally would be sitting, and Maya was upstairs in what they call the green room, where you wait to go on stage. We were talking in the computer, so we were both at the Hideout.
Yeah, but in different spaces.
Different spaces. And whenever we were together in the same room, we were wearing masks. And so we'll probably do the same thing in February. Folks, and I urge you, if you haven't heard it already, to check it out. Good discussion. I'm not sure that, Peter and Rosanna did their best. I think they met where they actually met, and this has to do a little bit with Peter Cunningham's place in life, was an issue of police reform. I'm not sure where if they see eye to eye on something like Medicare for all, but they saw eye to eye on police reform.
Yeah. I think they'll probably see eye to eye on the tragedy of this raid. So,
Anjanette Young's the raid on Anjanette Young. All right, Maya, stay safe and sound, and we'll talk to you real soon. All right.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, that's Maya Dukmasova, my partner in crime for the Chicago Reader. D, what you got for me, young man, before we head out the door?
All right, let's do the back half here. We have 2 stories, and one of them breaking, so I guess let's get to that one first. Breaking news. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and Fran Spielman. Lightfoot accuses alderman of exercising aldermanic prerogative at its worst. Yes, another dispute between the Chicago mayor and her city council. So it's time for the latest episode of everyone's favorite Chicago political soap opera. Yes, it's time for a mayor and her alderman.
A mayor and her alderman.
I want an answer. It's not something you ignore.
I think you're 100% full of shit, is what I think.
And no, this has nothing to do with cinnamon rolls, by the way.
This is catching me off guard. I have no idea what you're about to say.
I sent it to you. It's on your phone. So as I read here, maybe try to look it up here and weigh in with your thoughts. It says here, Mayor Lori Lightfoot on Tuesday condemned as, quote, aldermanic prerogative at its worst, the decision by downtown alderman Brian Hopkins, Ben of what ward?
Come on. 1-2. Second ward.
And Brendan Riley, Ben of what ward?
1, 2, 3, 4, 42.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Those 2 aldermen to block plans to raise commercial property taxes along North Michigan Avenue to bankroll security improvements after 2 rounds of looting. Lightfoot said commercial properties fronting the Magnificent Mile are, quote, suffering and hurting after a dramatic drop-off in sales and foot traffic and were willing to tax themselves to shore up their defenses and lure back shoppers. But Hopkins and Riley blocked plans to create the special taxing district. The mayor said, quote, the businesses in the downtown area come to us in light of the challenges they experienced and were facing over the course of the summer and the fall and asked for help. We're willing to be taxed, and what you saw was a manifestation of aldermanic prerogative at its worst. What possible legitimate reason could there be? We worked with the aldermen. We addressed every single concern that they had, even as the goalposts repeatedly kept moving. So those businesses are left high and dry because of those aldermen. It's a mistake. Hopkins countered that Lightfoot's efforts to, quote, achieve dictatorial rule of Chicago have been stymied. Love that word, stymied. Not because of aldermanic prerogative, but because the legislative branch is a co-equal branch of government. Hopkins said, quote, that's a lesson she needs to learn and needs to learn quickly. Ben Joravsky, your thoughts?
Wow, lot to unpack here. Lot to unpack here. And here I go. I'm unpacking it. First of all, I'm going to say something that I don't think I've ever said before. Second ward Alderman Brian Hopkins makes a compelling point. How about that, D? Am I fair or what? Brian Hopkins, Mr. I Love Tiffs, Mr. Lincoln Yards, Mr. Sterling Bay. What can I do for you? Have an egg roll, Mr. Sterling Bay. That Brian Hopkins.
Well, there went that compliment you gave him.
Well, I said that.
Muddied it up a little bit there.
I just wanted to make sure people knew I was talking about that Brian Hopkins as opposed to some other Brian Hopkins that may be in the Chicago City Council. Though now that I think about it, there's only one Brian Hopkins in the Chicago City Council. Thank God. No, I didn't say that. But he makes a compelling point. Brian Hopkins, you make a very compelling point. They are equal branches. You have the executive branch, which is the mayor. You have the legislative branch with the Chicago City Council and aldermen. In the old days, the mayor would treat aldermen a little like Chicago Public Schools treats teachers. You're going to do what I tell you, you're going to do it now. Shut up and do what I say, or I'll take your car and make you walk home. That's how a mayor treats an alderman. But now it's a new day. And relationships between the alderman and the mayor. And I, for one, appreciate that, because I do believe we're better served if each branch of government is treated with respect and they act as a check and a balance on one each other. Okay, so folks, you're going to have to learn something about an SSA, a special service area. Oh, I can hear the complaining right now. Oh, my God, I hate this. Special service area is sort of from the same family as the TIF, but there's a big difference. With a TIF, they raise everybody's taxes throughout the city to pay for a specific project that may not be in their community. In the case of Lincoln Yards, Brian Hopkins' favorite TIF funded deal, they raised everybody's taxes, Dennis's taxes, Maya's taxes, Ben's taxes, Leslie Harrison's taxes, Mark Sims' taxes on the South Side, no matter where you lived. John Canizera, head of the Fraternal Order of the Police, I assume he lives in Chicago. Wherever you live, Johnny, they raise your taxes for that TIF. Anthony Napolitano, you in the 41st Ward, they raise your taxes. It's a citywide tax hike that funds a specific project. With an SSA, it is a tax that's limited only to the people within a very specific district, and the money gets spent in their area. So people are taxing themselves to pay for something they presumably want really bad. Otherwise, they wouldn't tax themselves to pay for it. I've always said that if Alderman Brian Hopkins had come to the city of Chicago and said, I want to impose a tax on people in the 2nd Ward to pay for Lincoln Yards, I'd say, go ahead. Go ahead, Alderman Hopkins. And by the way, he wouldn't do that. Why? Because they'd be uprising. There'd be an uprising in the 2nd Ward. Wait a minute. Hold on, Brian Hopkins. You want to raise my taxes to pay for an upscale project in a neighborhood that's already gentrifying, an area where taxes are already rising, where developers would go anyway? No way. I'll only agree to this tax hike if you make sure that every sucker and sap in the city of Chicago pays for it. And so they pretend as though it didn't exist. The fiction about a TIF is that it doesn't raise your taxes, even though it does. Because if it didn't raise your taxes, how could they pay for it? The Chicagoans right now are scratching their head going, oh, this is baffling. I don't see how this works. Typical Chicagoan, I'll just not pay attention because it's too confusing. And I'll eat my hot dog, but I won't put ketchup on it. Chicagoans. Anyway, Brian Hopkins, as you can see, has a different attitude about SSAs because there's no getting around the fact. It's right there in your tax bill when you get it. SSA, only for the people in this district. Raises your taxes. And they'll come and call his office. Why you raise my taxes? And he'll say, well, I wanted to pay for security in the area. And then the people will say, hey, dummy, why don't you do it the way you paid for Lincoln Yards? Get the suckers and saps of Chicago to pay for it. And then Hopkins will have to go, habita, and explain why he wanted the suckers and saps of Chicago to pay for the Lincoln Yards deal. And he doesn't want the suckers and saps of Chicago to pay for the security deal on Michigan Avenue. So, but it's his prerogative. It's his prerogative. If he wants to oppose it, he has that right. And if the city council does not want to slap a tax on Michigan Avenue out of respect to the local alderman, in this case, Brendan Riley, as well as Brian Hopkins, then that's their right as well. And when Mayor Lori Lightfoot talks about aldermanic prerogative, that's her going back to the well. That's that phony issue. That fake issue of aldermanic prerogative, which was never legitimate, which was raised by my poor beloved lefties and liberals who should have known better, but didn't, picked up by the editorial boards. God help us all. And Lori's like, oh yeah, aldermanic prerogative? I'll just blame everything on the alderman. Like all the dumb ideas in Chicago weren't out of the minds of Chicago mayors. So now she's, aldermanic prerogative. She hopes if she just says those two words, aldermanic prerogative, residents on the north side who read the Chicago Tribune are like, oh, yes, aldermanic prerogative. I've heard this. This must be bad if it's aldermanic prerogative.
And it's like really fun to say.
Yeah, aldermanic prerogative. Michael Girardi, you got to come up with a song for aldermanic prerogative. Aldermanic prerogative. Oh, wow, wow.
We'll leave the writing to Michael Girardi.
And the guitar riff. I need a stinging guitar riff on that song. Aldermanic prerogative. So yeah, Lori Lightfoot go, this is aldermanic prerogative at its worst. I would say it's aldermanic prerogative at its best. It's aldermen doing what they're supposed to do, which is to look out for the interests of their constituents. And I bet you their constituents don't want to pay higher taxes, even if it benefits businesses on the go. They want the whole city to pay for those taxes. And so Brian Hopkins has to explain why it was a good idea.
I think I've heard him. He sounds nothing like that. I've never heard him say that before. Anyway.
Whenever an alderman defends a TIF deal, they always get a little weaselly. Don't listen to that guy at the reader. He's really weird. He's a hippie. He's an old hippie, ladies and gentlemen. I'm young and cool. So, Hopkins, I'm with you, all right? You never thought that moment would come? I'm with you, Hopkins, on this one. Yeah, you're looking out for your constituents. Here. I wish you were looking out for me on that Lincoln Yard TIF deal. Oh, boy, can't wait. Let's spend over $1 billion building an upscale community in an already gentrifying neighborhood with the money going to a developer who doesn't need it. Sorry, D. Sorry about that.
I was gonna say, guys, I could just let him keep going. We'll be here till like 6 o'clock.
You know, like it's like that Charles Erlin song. Oh, nobody knows what I'm talking about.
And that's how you lose them. You get them, and then you lose them.
But Charles Erlin, the great organist, man, he just goes on that riff. I love you more than yesterday, but not as much as tomorrow. And he's just going on. The song goes on forever, and I'm loving it. That's what it's like.
You had so many on board with that riff you had there. They just start talking about something.
Charles Erlin, I know. I don't. Every listener.
I can just see them all jumping off right now.
Charles who?
And hey,
Charles Erlin. Go ahead.
Michael Girardi. I don't know. Maybe a cover song of the Bobby Brown hit "My Prerogative."
Oh, even I know that song. Oh. It's my prerogative.
Sounds nothing like that. There's no guitar. But there it was, another episode of a mayor and her alderman.
A mayor and her alderman.
You have to be a good neighbor. You have to be a good neighbor. Otherwise, I'm going to be up your butt every day.
Well, it's got to be a better way to say that.
Tom Tunney. What a heck of an alderman. Heck of an alderman, Tom Tunney.
All right. And finally, oh, by the way, before we get to that, actually, Frank on the live stream chat weighed in here. He had 2 comments. The first, I'm going to clean up for you, Frank. Don't worry about it. Frank says that aldermanic prerogative is such a friggin' fallacy. He didn't say friggin', though.
I'm with you, Frank. Something they made up.
And then he goes on to ask, is our city council getting a backbone, kind of?
Yes, I think they are. We've seen that. We saw that in the budget vote. And we're seeing that in issues like this. And they should have a backbone. You know, the mayor of the city of Chicago should have to negotiate. And obviously, when the mayor said that they agreed to everything, well, at very least, there's 2 sides of that story, because if they had agreed to everything, they would have been singing the praise of this SSA. And Brian Hopkins and Brendan Riley been known to go along with aldermen. I mean, with mayors, all kinds of dumb ideas. So I don't know if I buy that there was total agreement. But, you know, they'll probably go in the back rooms and negotiate. And that's not how it should be. Compromise, give and take. And then they'll come out with an agreement. If I know them, they'll try to figure out some way to get the whole city to pay for it, though. Oh, boy. That's what Hopkins is in the back room saying, Mayor, this is how we do it. We make it a TIF. No one knows how TIFs work. We pretend as though it's not a tax. And Mayor Lightfoot will go, man, that's a good idea. I think we'll do that. And then the only one who'll complain is me.
Hey, that's a good idea. You want a cinnamon roll? All right.
Wrong alderman, but whatever.
No, I'm saying she got the cinnamon rolls from Tunney, right? And so,
Oh, I get, well.
handing them out. You know what I mean?
Very subtle. Very subtle.
Yeah, maybe a little too subtle. All right, moving on. Madigan Gate, the time when utility bigwigs ComEd admitted to arranging jobs, contracts, and payoffs to the associates of Illinois House Speaker, one Michael Joseph Madigan. Give us an interview, Madigan, and I'll play a little drop of audio right there instead of prison bars. That's all I got. Right? Did he do it? Did he not? Well, it's hard to tell right now, to be honest, but I have a feeling that after I read this story, a flip-flop will be happening on the Ben Joravsky Show from our host, Ben Joravsky. So let's just get a quick recap on where you stand. I believe before the show, you said that you are on the bus waiting to roll over our speaker, Mike Madigan. You say Madigan resign, right?
Yes,
Wrong?
I said that. I wrote a column yesterday to that effect.
Okay.
I wrote a column. But that just because I wrote that column, just because it's in print, does not mean I cannot do a flip-flap right now. I'm capable of doing that, D.
Okay.
So what's the update?
He's capable of doing that. Remember where we stand on this, everybody. Right now, Ben Joravsky on the bus. Get on board.
That's it.
Okay. Now, if you recall, back in September, at the urging of Illinois House Minority Leader, Republican Jim Durkin, and two other Republican lawmakers, the state legislature formed a special investigative committee.
I remember this committee. Chris Welch! Our good friend Chris Welch was the chair of this committee.
A committee to look into Speaker Madigan's ties to the ComEd bribery scandal and possibly recommend disciplinary action. We called it from the get-go here, political theater. That's all this is. Well, bad news, Illinois conservatives. It looks like the political theater piece has been canceled.
The breaking glass somehow or other works for breaking news and canceling the theater.
I know, right?
Hold on. Velma.
Okay,
come on. In the sound department, you got to do a little better than that.
Okay, her name Velma, and she's not a real person. It's all me, guys. WBEZ, please hire me. Okay. After 3 months of all of this, Representative Emmanuel Chris Welch, former guest on the Ben Joravsky Show, the Hillside Democrat who chaired the investigative committee, told us, well, what we knew all along. Yes, it was political theater. Welch called the legislative investigation a stunt. It's a joke, and that joke ends today. Welch, he's getting stern here. All right, Welch told the Sun-Times, quote, "This was a power grab by the minority party," referring to Republican leader Jim Durkin's demand to hold any hearings at all. He said, quote, "This is a sham political show trial to help leader Durkin try to become speaker, and he's abusing what his rule was meant for, and to vote to support subpoenas in this process is pandering to that the abuse, and I refused to do it." So, Ben, your thoughts here, and remember what you said there before I read this, okay?
All right. I'm with Chris Welch on this one. It is theater, and Durkin was just trying to use it to get support for his effort to find Democrats to vote for him for speaker. He'll never find the Democrats to do that. He's just trying to embarrass the Democrats. Michael Madigan is the most effective tool the Republicans have right now to take back the state from the Democrats, to defeat J.B. Pritzker in 2022, to take a hold of at least one of the houses and make Illinois a red state again. Michael Madigan is an effective tool, in part because he absolutely refuses to go public with his defense. And this is really grinds my gears. As I said, we had Jamie Andrade on, State Representative Jamie Andrade on this weekend. You guys can check out that interview. He defends Madigan. And I was like, he agreed with me. I go, the Wizard of Oz Act just got to end. So in this case, why didn't he pull an Oliver North? Why didn't he just go before the committee and let them have it good? You know, and turn the tables on them. And hey, Durkin, what about the favors you did for Commonwealth Edison? Hey, Republicans, if you think this is so outrageous, these Commonwealth Edison legislation, these rate hikes for Commonwealth Edison, why didn't you vote against them? You're all a bunch of Harper Valley hypocrites. And the Democrats would be cheering, and I would be cheering, and Dr. D would be cheering. Yeah, man. But no, he hides in the back rooms, hides behind the curtain. We never get to hear it. He makes Chris Welch's of the world do his dealing. So, D, if you're not going to defend yourself, Michael Joseph Madigan, then step down. You know, if you're only going to defend yourself on phone calls you make to members of your caucus, they're the only ones who get to hear what you have to say, like when you call them up to ask for their votes. What good is that to the general public? How are voters, like in swing districts, going to believe in what you have to say if they don't hear it? You know, the old way of doing business that worked so well for Michael Madigan is no longer working in this century. The guy doesn't even have a cell phone. He's more antediluvian than I am, if such a thing is possible. So, D, that's why I say, yes, it's political theater, and I wish Michael Madigan had joined the theater. Wow, that would have been you talk about how about if Michael Madigan had showed up for his hearing, like Oliver North? Oliver North was a Reagan White House appointee who confronted his interrogators at a Senate hearing back in the 80s, before most of you were born. But he rallied Reagan country because he stood up to his interrogators. And I wish Madigan had done the same. Called them all a bunch of hypocrites, which they are. Republicans are hypocrites. Go on before that committee, reminded hey, Durkin, where are you on Donald Trump's malfeasance? How come you have nothing to say about that? Hey, Darren Bailey, DP, big feller, you care so much about me. How come you never speak up about Donnie Trump? You know, where are the rest of you Republicans on the issue of Proud Boys beating up black people in the streets of Washington? You know, throw it out there. Throw it at them. Even if it's not related. Put him on the defensive. But nope. He's just going to make phone calls to his caucus members, and everybody's supposed to fall in line? Democrats, you guys are sleeping on this one. I'm telling you right now, you keep messing around with this, and you're going to wake up in 2022, and some Republican is going to be governor of Illinois, and you're going to be like, how did that happen? So, D, I'm still on the bus. But if Michael Joseph Madigan wants to try a new tactic, if he wants to speak out and defend himself and go on the counterattack, well, I'll be more than happy to leave the bus, at least to listen.
All right, well, welcome aboard on the bus. That's really cool. Okay, stop hitting the horn, Ben. Go have a seat.
Do I gotta? Because Artie's taking up all the room back here.
Yeah, welcome. All right. So that's our show. Remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews and so much more. Over 800 episodes at the Chicago Reader website and wherever else you download podcast, chicagoreader.com/Joravsky, Jorav as in Victory, SKY. You can reach us on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email, bennyjshow@gmail.com. And hey, you can call us. You can always call us. 708-658-4788. The number again, 708-658-4788. You know, if the power goes out one day, or, you know, you got your internet goes down, give the Ben Joravsky Show a call. Leave us a message, and there's a good chance we will play that message on our program. Will it be a month later? Maybe. I don't know. I'm working on getting a little quicker about that. But leave us a voicemail. We always appreciate it. And also, check out the live show if you've yet to. If you download this show and you want to check a live show out, well, Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time on the Chicago Reader YouTube channel. Join the live stream chat. Have a good time. And, yeah, thanks, I guess.
I want to thank Maya Dukmasova, outstanding job as she always does. And I want to thank the man, the myth, the legend, the pride of joy in Illinois, without whom this show would be possible. That is Dr. Jill Biden will tell you, back home in Alton, they call him Dr. D. Give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.